Welcome to SikhCast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Hi, I'm Sean Holden, and welcome to the SikhCast. In this episode, we're featuring a poet, Amardeep Kaur, from Toronto, Canada. She's going to read out her poem, Morning Evening, and afterwards she speaks with me to share her process of making the poem, as well as what was going on in her life that pushed her to write it. But first, have a listen to this.
Morning, evening. This breath, my sip of hot cha in the morning, as I gaze out of the window. Removed from my mothership, yet still held, I feel connected, this moment with self, but not. A moment of longing, love, lost, reflect. I resist, with friends brightening the light of new openings. Budding encounters full of stories, I seek the small steps. Through colourful flowers and paths, I am both here and there. My amritvela, how is that possible? Each breath a new step. I take So Dar with me. It's in my pocket with a bundle of cards, inked with my favorite Japanese pen. It's in my hand. I didn't think I could even read, but then I reached the last card. I thirst for more. I could keep walking through the forest, even as the sun fades in the distance. I can see the path is lit. I want to keep walking.
All right, well, I guess I just want to start by saying hi, I'm Amardeep Kaur, and thanks for joining me today to talk about your poem, Morning Evening, which the audience just heard. I think I just kind of want to start by asking you, when you were writing this piece, what was going through your mind at the time that led you to writing this?
Thanks. So this, the backdrop of this poem is, it's pre-COVID, right? Morning, evening. This was written 3 years ago in the summer, so summer 2017, so that's 3 years from now. And this came out of a poetry workshop that Inni Kaur was doing at SIDIC. So it's came out of actually Sikh Research Institute in a way. And now it definitely resonates, a poem that would invoke certain connections or reflection or resonance in the kind of global context we're in now, right? The pandemic. But in terms of the original backdrop, back when the poem was written a few years ago, I was in a state of turmoil. I had lost my footing and I was experiencing, turbulent waters. And it was, so I needed to kind of recalibrate myself, right? Find my inner compass, stir myself into calmer waters, and refine my path, basically.
Maybe take us back. What was going on? What was going on at that time during your day-to-day that was that turmoil?
I had experienced an immense loss in my life, in my relationship, and I was in grief. And now when people experience grief, like it's, the emotions kind of really get to the surface, right? It comes out to the skin. There's this outburst of emotions and outbursts of anguish, or I would say like an outburst of memories. Memories, voices in the head start playing. And so like basically like the mind and the body becomes disaligned, right? It's no longer aligned. And for me, more than that, like my spirit, the light inside felt injured, right? I felt like I had lost a part of myself, and I needed to give that spirit some ease, some peace. And the other thing about grief and loss is like when it happens, like the whole present moment becomes a blur, right? For me, it was this real blur, and I am reflecting on finding the courage to walk again in life. And the way I set up the poem then is kind of in that kind of space of healing. And there are like these subtle differences, I would say, between the first part, the morning, and the evening, right? In the first part, the present moment is still a blur, right? I'm gazing out of the window. I'm reflecting on my different relationships. The self is kind of starting to look calm, but the mind is wondering, right? It's kind of
Right. Yeah.
wondering.
That's off the top of your poem there when you're reflecting and looking through the window. You have your tea, but you're looking and reflecting through the window. That's that moment there.
Yeah, it's kind of longing, right? It's longing for connection, and it's kind of sensing, right? It's sensing how to connect to people, how to connect with relationships, how to connect with love from a distance. It's kind of here and there.
I think like the viewers want to get to know you a little bit more, or the listeners, sorry. They want to get to know you, the writer of the poem. So what we have written here is that you grew up in Hong Kong, and you both teach and study in Toronto. Could you please, take us through what's your journey? What's your life like?
Yes, so my work setting most of the time in the day is I'm set up in the university, now mostly at home, but with the university, it's a range of things: teaching, research, writing, then there's committee works and reports and emails and lots of editing. And in March, everything was very abrupt. We moved from, the physical university environment to this long distance home environment. But things are starting to feel grounded again. And last year, I had this opportunity to teach Introduction to Sikhism. This was a course at University of Toronto, and it was in Mississauga campus. So we have a lot of Sikh students, and I would say it's more than Sikh students who are interested now in learning about Sikhism. So we had a sizable population, especially in the suburbs of Toronto. And what I'm trying to do is find ways to bring more engagement, more practice with Sikh thought and with Sikh poetics in universities. But I don't want to idealize the university too much, because there's actually quite a bit of a difference between Sikhism and Sikhi, and how do we teach Sikhi in universities where Sikhi becomes Sikhism, and there are challenges.
My understanding is that when you started doing this was like a big shift for you, right? Like your background wasn't, Sikh history that you're teaching now. It was a different practice entirely. So what was going through your mind when you got the offer to teach this? What was you thinking at the time?
Yeah, this was it was a interesting opportunity and challenge. It because I've been training in geography. I'm trying to get more on the humanities side of things, but I'm not trained as a theologist or a religious studies scholar, right? I'm a geographer. But this is like, I saw this opportunity as like the call, you go teach Sikhism, right? And I remember Inni Kaur's journey where she's talking about her process of learning Punjabi and teaching Punjabi at the same time. And teaching really is the opportunity to up one's own knowledge. And it actually helps a lot because we have to figure out how to share knowledge, right? Knowledge is an exchange. And also in terms of teachers and scholars, that's knowledge is a lifelong process. In fact, that's the meaning of Sikhi, right? It's a lifelong art of learning, unlearning, and relearning. So I took up that challenge as the process of learning and being engaged in that knowledge exchange with other people.
Right. So you're teaching at the University of Toronto, right? Take us through the first day that you had when you had the classroom with hundreds of kids. I think it was you were mentioning.
They were 120 students. That's what we had. So this is I was actually surprised that there were 120 students interested. This was the second year course, so it went from January till April. And so that's about 12 weeks, right? And in the first lecture, the first lecture was interesting because I was standing in front of the room and the students were all sitting in their seats, and there's a bit of a disconnect. And I kind of was like, I don't even know these students' name. How do I teach them? Right? Because I want to know my students, right? I'm invested in people. And so I asked them a lot of questions, but students don't speak up in lectures. They kind of want to just sit back. So I had to understand, okay, how are students approaching the lectures, right? Where are they coming from? What is their setting, right? They want to hear a lecture. What are they looking for? So I had to think about all these things. And then I had to think about how to offer this knowledge in digestible way.
So then what did you do to try and get them engaged with the material?
Well, I would give them a lot of contradictions. So I gave them contradictions. Are we learning Sikhism or are we learning Sikhi? And I'd constantly give them these paradoxes and contradictions. And even in coming from Sikh thought, right? Nirgun, Surgan, are we a monotheistic religion or are we not? So I provoked more questions in them, right? To get them to think about these complexities in thinking about how we learn about our faith, right? Or how we learn about other faith, because there were also non-Sikhs, many non-Sikhs in that course.
I guess I just wanted to ask, with this poem, coming back to the poem that we had, what was the main message that you felt like you needed to share with the people that were listening to it?
With the poem, you know how I talk about so the first part of the poem was the morning, where I was kind of longing, but something shifts in the second part. And in the second part, the evening, I find the courage to take the step, right? I find the courage to get involved in the healing. And I'm doing it through the poetry of the gurus, right? So Dar. And for me, it was about getting involved in the present moment and healing for me. And for people, I really want people to think about how we feel connected again, how we nourish our inner self. And the global pandemic now, we were just talking about COVID, it has a particular impact on Sikhs and on Sikhs as a diaspora, on Sikhs in Punjab. And many of us are separated from our loved ones or have experienced losses. And we have to find our footing, our grounding, or re-find it. And there's a lot of talk about connecting with the social self, but I really want listeners to reflect on their inner self. Get to know the person deep down inside and to nourish that inner self. And when that inner self is at peace, calmer, at peace, then the present moment becomes much more appreciable. And to find that appreciation in each activity, in each present moment, whether that's walking or cooking or watering a plant.
And that footing for yourself, what is it for you?
For me, the footing has definitely been trying to, like, I go back to this poem and I reflect, when I was displaced, right? How did I ground myself? I know that there is a grounding. I know that there's anguish and challenges, and we have to heal, right? Healing is not a single moment. In the poem, it's kind of set up as morning and evening, but this healing happened over many mornings and evenings. It was after constantly going out with So Dar, right? And finally got to the point when I felt like I could heal, that I could keep going. I felt like I became involved in the present moment. And that was like the moment for me in terms of the healing.
Well, again, thank you very much for your time, for speaking with me.
All right. Thank you, Sean.
All right. Thank you again.
You were listening to SikhCast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.